Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Incubator Podcast. Daphna's complaining about the music outside.
It's very festive.
Well, I just want to make sure that people get to hear all the important things that our
Oh, not the
guests
music.
have. Yeah. No, I don't want them to hear the music. No, I want them to hear.
It will work. It will work out.
Yes.
I'll make sure that the music is tuned out. We are joined by one of the earliest guests on the podcast, Betsy Pilon, who is the executive director of Hope for HIE. Betsy, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to see you guys in person.
I know
It's so fun.
this was I want to say like episode 2 or 3 of the podcast.
Literally, yeah.
Like maybe 4, maybe maybe it was episode 4.
Very early.
Yeah. So you're like the OG.
Yeah.
As my daughter would say.
You know, we felt very early on that we had to include parent groups on the podcast.
But also, to her credit, she reached out.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, and we're like,
And
we would
we're
love
like,
to
yes,
have parents.
please.
Yes, of course.
100%.
Yeah, so I
Yes.
think you are leading the way in terms of parents just like walking
Yeah.
through that door and be like, let me say my piece here.
Well, I think that's true for everything that you do at Hope for HIE. I mean, really, you are, we've been talking about collaborating all day, and I think it's a two-way street with parent groups, but you've done a tremendous job at saying we need to do more for these patients and families, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been quite a road.
Yeah, I
And
believe it.
surprisingly, not surprisingly to me, but we go around the country, we talk at a lot of different conferences. I take a lot of the stuff that we recorded together as sort of fodder for some of the arguments that we're trying to make about including families and so on and so forth, and how attentive families are to what we do, how we do it, and so on. Because you had mentioned some stories about that. I'll invite people to go and listen to your story on the episode itself. But tell us a little bit about your session today at Hot Topics.
Yeah. So I was asked to speak about the full-term experience and bring attention to QI possibilities. So I talked a lot about, the unmet needs of our families, focusing basically on 4 different things, and hopefully everyone got something to take home that inspires them to look at their own units. 2 that I think are a little bit more nuanced and complicated: communication and support. Like, those just are big topics. I could talk about communication for hours, but 2 actionable items. And we have some really good evidence now and data supporting looking at what babies can and should be held or fed, or held and fed during cooling. And so that was really kind of elevating that and saying that there are units out there that have these guidelines that are doing it really well. And these are QI opportunities that we know matter, not just to, like the good, feel good maternal infant bonding,
That's right.
but
It's not just a nice thing to
right.
do. Yeah.
It's physiologically important. And, on the feeding side, there's that evidence that the babies that are able to be started with trophic feeds and things like that, their length of stay decreases, their time to build up full feeds, decreases. So there's a lot of that good evidence that has been done. And so, just looking at what can you start and what can you look at in your own, hospital and situation for this population to improve it.
I'm going to make a plug for the Florida Neurologic Network. We just redid our protocols with an eye on specifically holding and feeding during therapeutic hypothermia. So we'll have you at another meeting soon. But I love what you said about the full-term experience. And I think that the community has a lot of stories of the extremely preterm infant, the medically complex family, but maybe you can give us just a little bit of that kind of full-term experience that I think we don't talk enough about in the community.
Yeah, I think as much as, education and communication surrounding that in prenatal care is very difficult, because I know it's, and even just how people communicate when you are in the NICU and what is going on and what could happen and prognosis and all of that. But, prenatally, we don't have great communication and education about what could happen, other than you could go into premature labor and then your baby can end up in the NICU because they're premature. And that's really where it ends. And so for families like ours, everything goes well. You get past these checkpoints, and then all of a sudden,
You mean throughout the pregnancy?
Yes, absolutely. And then you think you are scot-free, you're good to go, you're past 36 weeks. and then something happens, whether that's intrapartum or, during delivery or even, shortly after when we have these kids with the sudden unexpected postnatal collapse that, it's kind of like that delayed onset of, things like seizures. And, so these families, something didn't go, it was great until it wasn't. And typically these are not small events. These are, like in my case, Max stopped moving when I was 37 weeks pregnant, went in, had an emergency C-section, intubated right away, transferred for cooling, the whole bit. And so, this is very unexpected. You arrive, you are in a sea of preemies typically. So while HIE is not ultra rare at all, and especially, outside of high income countries, it is, you definitely feel you might be the only baby in the NICU that is full term or is really, really, really sick in full term. And then, because for HIE families in particular, since it is a neurological impact, this isn't something normally transient, and while outcomes are getting better and cooling has significantly improved outcomes and decreased mortality, and, somewhat morbidity, we still have a long way to go. And so these families often do not see themselves represented in councils, in advocacy, in pictures in the NICU, and those outcomes too of seeing like a lot of times, in the disability advocacy side, you don't see the kids in wheelchairs, you don't see them living a great life. You just see like the able-bodied kids running around. And so our families, and others have, tried to, when we can, advocate and say it matters for us to see our families too.
Sure.
And it is, we might not have these like months and months long stays, but the impact is significant, and almost we don't get the same chance to breathe through our experience either, because it's like you do this.
In and out.
Yeah, you're in and out with this very acute, life-changing situation, and then you get discharged, and then you're like left with this potentially very medically complex infant in your lap going, what just happened the past few weeks and what is going to happen next?
Moving forward. Yeah, and the data is quite clear, actually, that length of stay does not predict stress, anxiety, depression, postpartum depression for NICU families. That the quote-unquote short-term stays suffer just as much from those as the really long-term stays. We've focused a lot about what can people take home to their units, what can they start doing right away. And I know for our unit, something we've been focusing on is this kind of preemie-centric language. We do education for families every Wednesday. And I've always told the people who come to teach, we have the range of babies, and everything you have to teach about, we can make accessible for all of our families. So what are some easy take-home tips for people to go home and better include the full-term?
Let's pick 3.
The top 3?
Yeah.
The full-term family in their units.
Yeah, I think just taking an open look at what messaging looks like. And that communication matters, word choice matters, it's important. Now, and it's a lot of pressure on everyone, but you can look at how you talk about the care that, in your population that you're providing, and making sure that instead of like preemie, you can change it to NICU, and things like that. Those are small changes that make a big difference to just make things more inclusive. And just, if you do have family engagement, which I hope everyone is moving towards, family-centered care, and having that representation, that you're looking at equity of representation across gestational ages and making sure that you do have that included. And, looking at multiple marginalizations that you can also highlight and elevate in ways that are meaningful to the families. And then third, I think just, again, being mindful that the support that you're connecting them to is that you have some sort of support. That if you're doing that because there's great resources for preemies, make sure that you're looking for, I heard that actually yesterday from a physician that said, how would I even know that Hope for HIE existed? I'm not up on everything. And I'm like, well, your social worker should be, and and other people, in the unit. So, if you're looking for those resources, just take a couple minutes and look at your different patient populations and see what those are. I mean, there's many, many different just general NICU support organizations out there that do excellent work across all, NICU experiences, and then those that have like a diagnosis specific, obviously, there's a lot of resources for that
Interestingly
too.
enough, if you know one, and it's not the one you're looking for in terms of maybe a specific diagnosis, ask them. They probably will tell you
Yes.
what is the one
That's
you're
right.
looking for.
They'll help you find.
Of course.
Because you guys have been working through the Neonatal Parent Network and so many other overlapping opportunities. I mean, you guys know each other very well, the parent groups. I
Yes.
think that's a great idea.
Yeah, well, and the NICU Parent Network, is the kind of membership collaborative of the different NICU groups too. Now that may or may not include the diagnosis specific,
Right.
but again, it's a small community, so we all kind of know each other.
Yeah. And that's another plug, I will say, for being on social media as a physician, because the parent groups, I think, do a tremendous job at providing information about opportunities for education for families and for healthcare professionals. And I feel like I learn so much more about family experience through what I see on social media.
The ownership that parents have taken through social media in the handling
Advocacy
of their situation has changed dramatically the field of medicine. And I think they dictate everything at this point in terms of the outcomes that matter, the messaging, the way to speak, everything. And that's the way it should be. Yeah. Betsy, thank you so much for dropping by. Congratulations
Thank
again.
you.
And hope for HIE. Anybody looking for resources?
If you don't know about it by now, go look. So many resources for families.
Just type in HIE.support, and it'll take you right to the support programs and services.
Awesome. Thank you, Betsy.
Thank you.
Oh, that was